Africa is witnessing two powerful mass demonstrations in Kenya and in Nigeria, former colonies of the British. Are the protests much alike? First, let's look at the immediate causes. The Kenyan mass protest was ignited by a controversial Finance Bill 2024, which was almost signed into law by President William Ruto. The bill was expected to increase taxes on virtually all commodities such as bread, vegetable oil, vehicles, and electronic appliances. In Nigeria, however, the immediate cause of the mass demonstration was the rising cost of all goods and services, caused by the removal of oil subsidy. So you can now see that the immediate causes of this protest are quite different. In the case of Kenya, the Kenyan revolt is preventive, aiming to prevent the passage of the finance bill into law. The protest in Nigeria, on the other hand, is largely reactive, responding to the implications of the already removed subsidy. Secondly, the Kenyan protest has been much more daring and violent than the protest in Nigeria. On June 25, protesters invaded one of the most sacred places of the government, the Kenyan parliament. They did not only break into the parliament, but they also wrecked the furniture, doors, and other vital things in it. Now watch this.
The Kenyan flag. Nothing more between these men and incoming bullets. And the line between calm and conflict has been as thin for weeks.
Mr. President! Mr. President! Watch us!
William Ruto, Kenya's president, is public enemy number one. And it's his political home the people charged today.
Mr. Speaker, sir! I'm here to address you. You must go! Ruto must go!
In the last 10 minutes, President Ruto addressed the nation.
We must isolate crime from democratic expression and separate criminals from people exercising the freedom of expression and divergent opinion. I shall continue to lead a government that is fully committed to maintaining the integrity of our state, promoting the unity of our nation, and enhancing the peace and security of all citizens and their livelihoods.
The issue? Taxes. Put simply, the government wants to raise them to pay off debt. Across the country, from Eldoret close to the border with Uganda to Mombasa on the coast, people are saying no.
Our lives are tough. People are struggling. People don't have places to stay. People don't have meals to eat.
The crushing burden of a cost of living crisis brought people out to protest, and some won't go home tonight. Medics say at least 10 people have been killed by police fire. These people run back to their medical tent, seemingly being shot at as they treat the injured.
Wow. The Kenyan revolt has been imbued with fascinating resilience and strong will. In contrast, the protests in Nigeria have yet to imitate this character. In some places in northern Nigeria, such as Kano, Kaduna, there have been attempts to breach the state government houses, but these were all futile. One can rightly say that it is not a surprise because the Nigerian protests are largely not against revolts. Before the June 25, Kenyans had called for 7 days of rage to combat the finance bill. Following this event, Omoyele Sowore, one of the chief figures of the protest, became excited and called for 10 days of rage starting from August 1 in Nigeria. Nigeria is much larger than Kenya, both in population and landmass. But the Kenyan Gen Zs have achieved an immediate goal, which was to prevent the passage of the finance bill into law. The Nigerian protests, though agitating against hunger, do not have one clear demand as the Kenyans. But Nigeria protests, unlike the Kenyans, have enumerated at least 20 areas they want the federal government to focus on, including the scrapping of the 1999 constitution, unicameralism, payment of 250,000 naira to workers, massive reforms in education with grants and loans and subsidy, of course, restructuring of Nigeria, among others. Now, watch these demands closely. Nigerian protesters are calling for a much more deeper transformation than the Kenyans are demanding. Scrapping the constitution is tantamount to hitting the very fabric of any society, and Nigerians are saying that these demands are non-negotiable. This means that we are much more likely to see intensification of violence in Nigeria in the coming days, as the Tinubu-led government may not be braced to accept all of these demands. Now, this
when common pepper 5 seed is 500 naira. So wetin be the next thing wey we go do? How many of you here go fit stand to say we no go vote, or we no go vote for you because you no qualify? When Ambrosali dey campaign, Ambrosali came with just a tortoise car, and the shirt wey Ali dey wear that time, the shirt tear. You dey use native when tear as a professor to campaign.
Yeah, they are the cross section of Nigerian youth having the peaceful protest here in the city of Port Harcourt. You can see the movement saying no more to bad government, no more to hunger, no more to bad government, no more to good government. Nigerian youth are on it. Yes. These are youth. Okay. These are the demands by Nigerians ongoing here. Okay. You can see the inscription, Nigeria deserves better. A lot of youth in their thousands here in the city of Port Harcourt, and you could see it.
Now, this brings us to the reactions or responses of the governments of the two countries. In Kenya, Ruto's response began even before the June 25 revolt. The Ruto government introduced the finance bill in 2024, and it had its first reading in the parliament on May 13. It was met with protests. Consequently, the government removed some parts of the bill on June 18. The proposed tax increases that were scrapped included a 16% value-added tax on bread, in addition to taxes on motor vehicles, vegetable oil, and mobile money transfers. The protesters were not impressed, however. They demanded that the entire bill be withdrawn. On June 20, the second reading of the finance bill took place. On the 25th of June, the parliament passed the amended bill. This was meant to proceed to the third reading before being taken to the president for assent. That same day, the protesters stormed the parliament. Legislators fled through a tunnel, but the protesters allowed opposition legislators who voted against the bill to walk out of the building. Initially, Ruto, in his address to the nation, used very strong words against the protesters. Ruto called the protest a treasonous event without mentioning the controversial bill all through his speech. But on June 26, he gave another address in which he made a U-turn in his tone and stance, saying, "I run a government, but I also lead the people, and the people have spoken." He promised not to assent to the bill. However, Ruto's first reaction had been negatively imprinted on the minds of Kenyans as they are now clamoring for Ruto's resignation. Ruto responded once more by sacking almost his ministers, scrapping the office of the First Lady, and then appointed some members of the opposition to head his various ministries. In Kenya, we can see that the protesters are preventive, attempting to stop the finance bill. But in Nigeria, protesters are reactive, trying to fight against the implications of the already removed subsidy. Now, what has been the response of the Tinubu-led government? Before the protest commenced, all efforts by President Tinubu to address the annoying consequences of the subsidy removal have been fruitless and at other times absurd. Take, for example, the rice palliatives Tinubu distributed. They were barely enough to feed over 200 million people. To aggravate the case, these palliatives were hijacked by some political gladiators, both at the federal and state levels. They were only discovered during the protest. In reaction to the beginning of the protest, Tinubu had been remarking his commitment to Nigerians' right to protest. He had been invoking memories of his protest against the military. Unfortunately, his government had reacted to the protest with ambiguity and hypocrisy, of course. On one hand, the president was saying that Nigerians must be allowed to protest because that is their right. But on the other hand, the president proxy was viciously attacking the people's right to vote. Senate President Godswill Akpabio, Tinubu's puppet, had visited a conference in Port Harcourt, Rivers State, where he enjoined the already gullible South people to denounce the protest. Akpabio made a despicable remark about the protesters, calling them enemies of the government. To crown it all, he was excited when Alhaji Dokubo Asari said he would attack protesters who would hold demonstration in the Niger Delta. In another development, of course, people of the Southwest, traditionalists and thugs in Lagos State, in a bid to instill fear, had leapt round the city to warn potential protesters, including Igbos, to keep away from holding protests in the city. I believe you see all these as conscious threats, right? Of course. But see where the President Tinubu government has shown his hypocritical reaction. Despite the clear-cut threats, the president did not call for the arrest of Asari Dokubo. Neither did he condemn Akpabio's uncivilized words against protesters. On August 4th, day 4 of the protest, President Tinubu made a nationwide speech. As expected, the tone of the speech was jovial. The president outlined many of his policies that he had initiated to address inflation, including the introduction of CNG vehicles, the students' loan, distribution of funds and palliatives to state government, signing of the 70,000 naira minimum wage into law, to mention but a few. However, in view of all of these things, the president warned the protesters to discontinue with a mass demonstration. Why the president's Tinubu reaction has been more of slowness, implicit threat, and double standardness, President Ruto's response has been swift. Nevertheless, the ties connecting the two protests are quite stronger than the forces separating them. Kenyans and Nigerians are protesting against not only the immediate causes of these demonstrations, but more importantly, against issues of police brutality, corruption, and financial wastage by the government. It is not surprising that Kenyans are seeking Ruto's resignation and Nigerians are pushing for profound constitutional reform. Kenyans' protests have sparked a bandwagon effect in Africa. With the growing power of Kenyans and Nigerians, more rebellions are expected to rise in other African countries. We are watching closely. We are watching closely.